Namaste, everyone, and welcome back to Waking Up with Mindful Serenity. And we're going to continue not so much with the question from the jar, but with the discussion that I want to continue on based on is life worth living question. That seems to be paramount in my mind lately. And the question, of course, my answer, of course, is going to be yes, it's worth living. But how do I prove life is worth living is the question. And whenever I get to talking about it, I spiel off into all these other thoughts that are coming into my mind. But there is an individual out there that I definitely want this answer for, addressed to. I want them to hear what life is and why it's worth living. And life is worth living because it simply is, I guess. And regardless if you're on a spiritual mission or a psychological mission or on a physical mission, still adapt, still, very much attracted and attached to physicality, it doesn't matter because we're all here for the human experience, right? It's the human experience that we're here to have, whether we are just these bodies and minds according to your mind or if we're beyond the body and mind. We are here for a human experience, so we have to embrace what it is like to be human. And being human is not easy. We talked about the pendulum last time, swinging back and forth, and on one side you have all the so-called positive phenomenon occurring in your life, and on the other side you have all the so-called negative phenomenon. And sometimes our attention puts, we're focusing only on what we want, so we don't want to look at what's on the other side, the negative side. But if we're not paying attention to that, we're going to get hit in the head with the pendulum when it swings, because it does continuously swinging back and forth. And there's always good and bad. And there is neither good and bad. So again, that very confusing paradox comes into play again when we think about our life experience. The most important thing we can do, as I mentioned before too, is to balance our perspective and stay in the middle way, the middle ground of understanding our lives and our human experience here. And instead of constantly looking at the negative and never seeing the positive, or constantly looking at the positive in an attempt to gain and grasp and cling to certain things in it, we need to balance our perspective in the middle and look at things as neither good or bad, or both good and bad. And one thing that comes into my mind when I think of that middle way are the 5 remembrances, right? If you find that you're teetering, especially towards it's got to be all good, and if it's not all good, life sucks, or it's got to get everything I want from life, or if I don't get everything I want, life sucks. We have to bring it back to the 5 remembrances in Buddhism, right? The 5 remembrances that there is going to be illness, to some form of the physical body because it is temporary. There could be illness of the mind, the brain, basically. Again, another one, think in terms of physicality here when we use this example. Is life worth it? We're talking about the physical world, the physical life. So we can have mental illness or physical illness. So it's going to be, swinging back and forth. We can land on any of those things at any time in our lives. That is the condition of living. And we also have this idea of aging. Our body is going to age. Our minds are going to age. Our experience is going to age. When we're in the physical world, we live in a linear time frame. So we see the passing of time, regardless if we understand that time is very relative or not, according to Einstein's theory. We still need to know that time, in our perspectives, we get a middle. We got a beginning and a middle and an ending of our story. We see it like that, right? This thing led to this thing. This moment led to this moment. This moment led to... So we're always connecting the dots and connecting the moments to form this sense of time. So we age according to that, right? We're not the same person we were in the beginning of the story. Now we're getting to the end where the end of the story exists. We also have to be mindful that death occurs. There is an end. There is an ending to the story. There's an ending to the temporary nature of all physical phenomenon. Nothing lasts. It comes into the experience and goes out of the experience. The pendulum swings, drops it off, swings back. It's just the way it is. Life is coming and going constantly. And the physical phenomenon that make up our human experience of life are going to come and go. So physicality is always going to have an end or an expiration date. And we in these bodies are going to have an expiration date. And that's very hard as a human to understand that, to even look at death. We spend most of our times in our lives hiding from it and we want to stay on the good side, and we see it on the bad side. So if someone dies, it's the worst thing possible. We need to learn to balance that perspective again. And if we're thinking of life as death as a part of life, we won't push it into the negative side of the swinging pendulum. We will see it as a necessity for life. It is a part of life. It is, it's neither good or bad, and good and bad kind of thing. And we do the same with illness and aging, but especially with death, because that's one of the hardest things for us humans to accept. We also need to accept that we're going to lose things. We're going to lose people. We're going to lose things. Things are changing constantly. People we love are changing constantly. Even when we begin a relationship, have the beginning, middle, and ending of the relationship, the person that we're in the beginning of this relationship with is not the same person that's in the middle of the story or the one at the end, because it's all our perspective of how they should be, right? So we're looking at them and with our perspective of how they should be. So we start to see things in them that we never noticed before, and we assume they're doing something wrong. But in actuality, we're just getting to know them when we get to the middle of the story. And then there may be an ending to the story. They may leave, or we may leave, or they may die, or something along that line. So that we have to be mindful of too, that we will lose in life, and things will constantly change around us. And because the pendulum is swinging, sometimes we'll have, seem to have abundance of things in our life, of what's so-called positive things in life. Positive because the psyche says that's what I expected to, in order to prove that life is good. And then we'll have the so-called negative. And that, again, is the psyche proving that this is what I expect. Life sucks, so this just proves that life sucks kind of thing. But we've got to get out of that absolute thinking and step back away from the pendulum. Focus on the middle. You'll still see the swinging pendulum and the whole picture of it, but know that it's all about the middle. It's all about this balance that exists, and that we're going to have both, what the so-called negative and the so-called positive. We can't appease the ego, because the ego is never appeased. And so as a human experiencing life, of course, our major thing is survival. And what do we need to survive? Let's hope we get that. So the body survives, and the mind survives, and the social being survives in the pack. And psychologically we survive and whatnot. But we want to be able to see that things are constantly changing and moving back and forth. And it's okay. Even if we feel sad inside watching, even if we feel mad inside watching, even if we feel whatever we feel watching it is okay, because that's a part of it. And we just need to learn to experience it all from the background, watching the foreground swing back and forth in front of us. And the final one, of course, is that we're all responsible for our actions. It's the only thing we really take with us are our actions and the consequences of those actions. So as we're watching that swinging pendulum, and we notice that life is good sometimes, not so great the other times, and instead of getting caught up on making it good at the expense of hurting other people, we try to be more holistic and accepting of life as it is, other people as they are, regardless of where they are in their consciousness levels, and start forgiving and loving and showing compassion and kindness, not just for the other beings that show up in our experience, but for ourselves as being a human being in this experience. And so often we don't do that. We don't have enough compassion for self. So we really need to focus on that grace, giving grace to ourselves, compassion for ourselves, because we, no matter how determined we are to have a balanced perspective, we're going to fall. We're going to slip back into unconsciousness and do nasty things, and we're going to come back out, and we're going to seek and grab things that we really don't need in this life, but that the psyche's telling us, I want to have that so that I don't have to deal with the wounded child within me, or the samskaras that are coming up, or whatever. I just want it to be comfortable. I want to stay on the good side, and that's part of human nature too. We want to stay on the good side. But the more we realize that we're not just human, we're the being as well, we learn to accept, hopefully, the not so great things in life, and to accept life exactly as it is, to accept ourselves in this ever progressing experience of being human for exactly where we are, doing what we're doing, being who we are, feeling what we're feeling, thinking what we're thinking, and to just continue to grow into the experience of being human. I think it's important that we remember that we are higher consciousness, and consciousness is a fundamental nature of everything, and we are that consciousness. So this human experience isn't the only thing we are. We're just here to experience what it's like to be human and to embrace that experience. But being human, of course, means that we're dealing with emotions and thoughts and egos and the grasping and the clinging nature tendencies and the aversion tendencies, the fear, the shame. And we can deal with it all and become better at being human by simply being aware that we're, and doing our best to stay centered back away from the swinging pendulum so we don't get hit in the head with it, and balanced on the middle way, that in the middle, reminding ourselves that everything we're watching going back and forth is neither good or bad, and it is both good and bad, and it's just perfect the way it is. And we get to experience it because we've been incarnated into these bodies and minds and this whatever we call ourselves so that we can experience it. Well, I just wanted to shout that out. I'm not sure if it makes a lick of sense to anybody. My ego is saying, I don't know why you do that. Why you get up there and talk about these things. But I'm just so compelled to that I couldn't stop myself. And maybe I'm the only person getting something from doing this experience. And if so, that's okay. I'm not doing it to be famous. I'm just doing it to be able to express this truth that I'm learning as I grow. And I hope that you feel the power within yourself to express whatever you're learning and sharing it, so that others can benefit. Even if those are, so that you can benefit from seeing yourself and your own growing process. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have an amazing day. Namaste.